Welcome everyone to the latest in our PCA Lockdown Vodcast series. This week, in light of the global Black Lives Matter protests calling for racial equality, sparked by the terrible and tragic murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, we thought we'd look at race and racism through cricket's lens. To do that, I'd like to welcome our guests, all former England players, Michael Carberry, Guha, Mark Butcher and Dean Headley. Right, let's get straight into it. Michael, there are fewer and fewer black players making it through to the top level of our game. Why is that?
I'm trying not to be dead cynical here, but I'll be honest, I just don't think the game cares. That's always been my view of it. In fact, there's about 5 black cricketers left in the game. When I started, there was about 10 or 15. There's now 5. The numbers are there, people. It's there for all to see. And I've heard excuses under the sun about, it's the decline of the West Indies. Let me tell you, there were problems in cricket. There still is now. There will always be, even when the West Indies were on the top of the world, right? So it's not using the decline of the West Indies why the numbers have gone down. Quite simply, there's been no investment in black cricket. There's no coaches in big positions. There's no county coaches. Not one county coach that's black, right? There's no black captains. So where's the encouragement for the next generation of black cricketers? Who's their talisman exactly, right? Who is their talisman?
I'd say, I'd add to that, Carbs, that there's a structural issue that cricket itself perhaps doesn't have a massive amount of control over, and I'm not disagreeing with anything you say. But if the amount of schools that play cricket that aren't fee-paying schools have gone from, in your day we played Croydon School, I played Croydon schools, and you played with a lot of kids from state schools and stuff who played the game. There are hardly any left, So in order to be exposed to the game and have facilities for the game and get a love of the game and be taught the game, you need to go to a fee-paying school. And if your parents don't have the resource to put you into one of those fee-paying schools, then the game passes you by pretty much. If there was money sloshing around in cricket in the same way that there was in football, whereby it paid for the clubs to be going out, finding talent, being able to sell it on, make money yourself, etc., etc., then perhaps there would be a greater emphasis in looking for people. But all I would say to you is that with cricket being the game that it is, it's still a niche sport. It's still the third biggest sport in the country, maybe not even that now. That you do not, it's not something where you have people, cricketers, very highly talented cricket people, running around all over the place that you're not seeing. If somebody is as good as Michael Carberry knocking around, you will find out, you'll hear about that within a week if there's somebody that good knocking around, no matter what colour of the skin or where they've been. Because, high class cricketers, athletes, bowlers, batsmen, fielders, movers are not things that you can just wander into, wander off down to a sort of like a club training practice and spot. They don't grow on trees, people that can play this game. It's a much more difficult, more specialized sport that requires a lot more nurture and a lot more aid than a lot of other sports are. You can't just throw a ball out there and have people run around and kick it about. There's just so many more facets to it than that.
What was your experience growing up as a British Asian? And when you first got into the England team, I see behind you there's England players and that lovely picture of the World Cup final, the multicultural team, a very diverse England team that won the World Cup. What were your experiences? And also you're on the board of the PCA, of course. What's the PCA's position on what we've seen this week and racial discrimination?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate to be part of a team that went from being a not very good side to the best in the world, and a similar sort of scenario really, where we kind of stumbled across this diverse group of personalities, but representative of the population, whereby you had Ebony, Rainford Brent and myself as part of the group, and it's not necessarily something we thought of at the time, but when you look at the image, the portrayal and what it represents, It's quite powerful, and there's absolutely no question that that representation leads to success as a team. That's what I'm so proud of with this group of players, is that, you know, there is that real kind of concerted effort to understand each other's cultures. That's the feeling I get anyway, and not only understand but acknowledge as well. And that's something I'm really encouraged by. The ECB have set up a South Asian strategy, which is a long-term strategy. In previous times, they've kind of dipped their toe in, and it's been a kind of flash in the pan. But I was really excited about the fact that it was going to be a thorough looking at every aspect of trying to increase opportunities for South Asians, but also representation, the pathways for South Asians to get into the pathway and go on to a higher level. But it made me realise this week that actually that it shouldn't just be about South Asia, it should be about the Black community as well. And we should be looking at all communities, because this is a game for all.
Dino, like Butch, you're mixed race, one white parent, one black parent. Your father, of course, played for the West Indies. Like Butch's father played for England. Black spouses. What were some of your experiences growing up, and the experiences of your parents when they first got together?
I think where you live has a big bearing on how much racial pressure is put on you. So I grew up in Stourbridge in Worcestershire. I went to a school that, well, our family were the only people of any colour in the school. I went to a secondary school, the same thing. You know, knowing that what my mum and dad went through, trying to buy a house, where their first house, and the neighbours just tried to buy the house in a syndicate, so a black person couldn't live there. But then it was okay when they found out it was Ron Headley who played for Worcestershire. I think that there are certain elements of this world that have improved beyond the 1960s, 70s, whatever. But there's still some elements that need sorting out.
Isha, Carbs mentioned about talisman, and behind you in that kind of England World Cup success huddle is Jofra Archer. Is he someone amongst this diverse England team that can be a force for good in this debate, in that people are going to look up to him? A lot of people want to be Jofra Archer. A lot of people want to bowl quick and use him as a kind of as a superstar role model that they want to take after.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know, kids grow up wanting role models, and you see someone that looks like you and can do extremely well and is playing at the highest level, and naturally you feel like you can go on and do a similar thing. And that's why visibility is absolutely key when it comes to feeling represented on the biggest stage. And so, yeah, I definitely think that he is someone who could do that. I just want to go back to the PCA's view on racism, and you know, they're very strong in making sure that no one is discriminated against, and equality is absolutely at the forefront of their thinking. But again, it just in the last week, it's made me question again whether we're doing enough as an organisation. You know, we absolutely lead the way when it comes to mental health, gambling, drugs, education, but are we doing enough when it comes to racism and education? I think education is incredibly important, and that is across the board, helping people to understand what unconscious bias actually means, and the different examples around that. It can be an uncomfortable topic for many, but I think it is essential in this day and age. And, you know, that's why I think, you know, we need to constantly be looking. It's a time for reflection. I know Carbs is frustrated and angry because it's taken till now for people to actually become aware of everything. But let's see this as an opportunity. You know, no one would have expected to be in this sort of situation or these circumstances in the last couple of months, where we're all at home, we're wondering what to do. There are things that are taking our attention, and while we've got that attention of everyone pretty much, I think now's the time to educate and really just try and push home just how important this is from a cricket community point of view.
Ish, I've got a question for you. Ebbs, and it's slipped my mind, the name of the initiative that Ebony
Ace.
started. Ace, that's right. So it's around Surrey County Cricket Club. It's about encouraging kids of Caribbean background mainly to sort of come along, try out the sport, be encouraged to kind of, to see if somebody could end up winning a sort of a professional contract or whatever. It's great. It was a brilliant initiative. And I remember, just going back to something you said about people's sort of awareness or lack of it around it. I remember as I was doing stuff on social media about it, so bigging Ebbs up and saying it's great. Going back also to Carbs' point, it's ridiculous that somebody like Ebony Ray from Brent, it's taken somebody like her to come along and push this thing to the front of the agenda. But as you say, it's an opportunity. Somebody's doing something great. But I got a load of pushback from people saying, why is it just black kids? Why aren't you doing it for all kids? And that's kind of the thing that you're battling against, that everybody's battling against. It's that idea of, the hashtag Black Lives Matter, and then people come back, well, surely all lives matter. Yeah, I saw something brilliant today. My house is on fire. I need some help. And the guy next door says, well, your house isn't more important than my house. I said, but my house is on fire. It's there's no. That's kind of what we're talking about.
This is why education is so important. This goes back years and years and years and years, and with the South Asians as well. I'm one of the lucky ones. I had parents who were happy to put me in with the boys at the age of 8. Dad was probably a bit more reluctant, but there was never a question about playing with British boys. I was the only girl of an Indian background in a team with British boys and boys of Pakistani descent, which for some traditional families would have been frowned upon. My parents didn't do that, and so it didn't matter to anyone else. It was more the fact that I was a girl within this group of players. And for some traditional families, it's actually frowned upon to see a youngster go on and play for England because, or not necessarily frowned upon, but they're reluctant for that to happen because of the age-old issue of colonialism and everything that's associated with the British Empire. And this goes back years and years and years. And what I think is happening here is when people ask those questions, they don't get it. They don't know what Black people have been dealing with, or they don't understand what Black people have been dealing with for centuries.
Today's news is next week's fish and chip paper, right?
So how do we make sure that it isn't next week's fish and chip paper? Because the next thing surely is to get this momentum and go, right, we need to.
But that's my next point. But that's my next point, Dave, right? That's what it kind of picks up with something Isha was saying about that education, right? Right, we talk about education. Right, we're in an era now where education is at the touch of a button. Okay, it's not like we have to go to the libraries like days before and hunt information. It's right there on your phone. Put it in Google. You'll have all the information you need on Black history. It's all there, right? Society tells you everything. It's not taught in the school. It's not, Black history is not even taught in the schools to Black and white kids. Because I think that's important. Black and white kids need to be able to understand Black history. You've got to know where you've been to know where you're going, in my opinion. All right. So if people talk about that education, there's been schemes started to try and get this thing going. Okay. But that's all I've seen in my 10 years on this planet, 39 and a half years. That's all I keep hearing. Well, it's a start of things. My question is, where's the middle? Where's the end? Where's the progress? So what needs to happen? Hold on. what needs to happen is I'm all for people, let's just say, showing solidarity now, doing their thing on social media. But I don't want people to get this thing misguided and think that that's the end, right? There needs to be more done. Do you understand? There needs to be change in infrastructure. The biggest thing that needs to happen, there needs to be change in infrastructure across all walks of life, government, politics, police, sport, right? There needs to be more done. There's not enough being done. This is why it's easy for it to go away. Right? So as I said, I'm happy people from all walks of life, I've seen it on social media, have blacked out their screens, have got behind it and taken a knee in my hometown of Croydon. Great. But that can't be where it ends. Do you know what I'm saying? We have to keep driving this thing. We have to, you talk about education. Well, yeah, again, things need to change. It's not, Black history is not even taught at school. We get one token month a year about Black history. One token month. Who even goes to the events? Where is it ever on mainstream TV? Nothing. It's not given any airtime. So therefore, where is that education coming from?
On this point on education, because he works in education, what would you like to see, and what do you think of Carl's points?
Just treating people properly and being polite and understanding that other people are different, and in the sense that, you might have some kid who wants to do something and another kid doesn't like that. You've got to have some tolerance in life. I think that I think in America, the biggest problem is there has been these things going on, but there's been no prosecutions. It's just been swept under the carpet. So there is levels, there's education, and then there's also prosecutions. These people have stood there and murdered a person. They need to have a sentence. People have to realise that it's not acceptable. But then you also have to. So my child, he goes to school. He doesn't see disability. He doesn't see colour. He doesn't really know when I talk to him about anything. He just goes, they just speak, aren't they? Whether they're handicapped or anything. When I was at school, there's all sorts of mickey taken, flying about and everything like that. But these kids are growing up a little bit neutralised. So my biggest thing at school is that we love putting labels on everything. There is more labels being put on every type of kid. In the end, all you're doing is dividing people. So from sexuality to colour to everything, we have a society that we love to label and create minorities, whether that's a sexual or colour minority. And I think, in a way, we've got to get away from that a little bit, where we've just got to start treating people properly. Now, that might be a utopia, but, I don't talk to my child about how he treats Black people. I talk to my child how he treats people. And hopefully, I'm not putting any barriers in the way.
I mean, what he's talking about there is humanity and just seeing everyone as equal. And that's how I've always wanted to live, just treat everyone the same. It's how my mum lived and how I've wanted to kind of continue her legacy in a way. But unfortunately, some people do look at someone and they see colour, or they see white privilege, or they see gay, or they see old, young, they see all these different things. So the next best thing then is understanding why they are that particular way. What is their history, and that is education. It always boils down to education and wanting to learn about a person. And these are all things that I think can be implemented if everyone is in it together. Like Carb says, you can't just have it for a couple of weeks and then that's it. You've all got to be in it together. That's Black, that's white, that's Asians, that's everyone.
Sorry to cut you, but there's a massive I see a massive ignorance to that education you talk about, unfortunately. Okay, I don't see a real want for people to educate themselves on my culture, your culture, Dino's culture, Butchie's culture. I don't see that want to do it.
What is our responsibility as the cricket community then? Because sport is a reflection of society, right? And I would want to learn as part of a team that's trying to win something, and we have goals together. I want to learn about my teammates so that we understand each other. And you know, I've been fortunate to have this relationship with Ebbs since I was 11, 12 years old, and she's partly one of the reasons why I want to help in this situation, because I see what it does to her as a friend of mine, right? And she's it's something we need to do as a cricket community, and hopefully that can set an example for other people.
I think trying to throw a positive slant on the situation for a moment. In Owen Morgan and in that World Cup winning cricket side, we had a man in Owen who, and sometimes public perception in many ways is more important than anything else. A man who stood up for Moeen Ali, stood behind Adil Rashid, was 100% behind fast tracking somebody like Joffrey into the side. Is that the whole optics around not spraying champagne on Moeen Ali when you win the World Cup? You know, the Owen being from an Irish background, etc., etc. He is somebody who is incredibly aware of the power that he wields as being somebody who's so prominent in the public eye, and has been very, very vocal in talking about how they all look out for one another. They respect one another's different religions, colours, creeds, whatever it might be. And that is a major, major part of the culture of their team. Now, I don't think I've ever encountered in cricket anyway, and perhaps not even in British sport, another leader as high profile as he is being as vocal about subjects such as this as he is. And so, you know, whilst everything's burning around us, let's try and narrow in on something that's good, and perhaps Owen's going to have to step up even further, and other high profile people around him are going to have to do more and more and more given what we've seen. But we do at least have a man who, whilst he's not going to be able to iron out the problems of black kids not being represented in age group sides for counties and not being in the county game enough, is going to be somebody that's going to stand up for cricket and its players and British people of all areas, and say that they all have equal, and if not in some cases, you know, better than equal worth in a unit, in an outfit that is going to win things. And at least there you have somebody that's on the side of good in this. You know, cricket can only look after its own corner. We're talking about a lot of things that are society wide. These are huge, huge issues. And I know you've invited us on here because it's for the PCA, and we're trying to keep it somehow involved in the world of cricket. As far as I'm concerned, this whole thing has very little to do with the world of cricket, and has to do with the world turning into, you know, or at least revealing itself to being the place that it's always been. You know, some of the things that have happened politically over the last 3 or 4 years have given people who have always held these views, some of them particularly unpleasant, has given these people a license to come out and to show them. You know, don't believe for a second that all of a sudden the world's become more racist, because it hasn't. All that's happened is these people have felt empowered to be able to come out and tell everybody how racist they are and not suffer any consequences.
Okay, but what would you say to me as a white bloke, and to my kids who are white? What would you like to see from the next generation coming through? Because white people have a huge responsibility in this whole topic.
When I've actually told people I was a professional cricketer, they literally used to give it a double take. Oh, I thought you were a footballer or a boxer. So you can see already, I walk in a room, there's already a stereotypical view. Just treat me like a normal person, Dave. That's it. You don't need to start talking like a black man to relate to me. I can understand perfectly good English. And that happens a lot, even in county dressing room. You walk in there and suddenly people start trying to talk to you like you don't understand plain English. So it's an ignorance. You're a person to me. I don't see colour. Just like when I walked out to bat, I didn't care if the bowler was black or white. I'm putting him in the bush. End of.
And that was the point I was kind of getting to in a way, Carbs, because when my youngest, who's just turned 13, saw what's been going on, his best friend Zaire, he said to my wife, he said, "Mum," he said, "so are you telling me that some people would look at Zaire and maybe treat him differently to how they treated me?" And
yes, young man. Yeah, that's
and that
how
was
it
the
is.
question. But that was my point about at what age do things start? I mean, I guess it depends on what experiences they have. But that was the first time he kind of looked and thought, oh, because up until that point, he hadn't seen any difference between him and his best friend. They were just mates. And then all of with what's happened this week and his exposure to it, that he started to think slightly differently about it, which I guess is where the education then comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I've always found that an interesting thing, that young children actually, for me, show us all adults the way of how life should be. You put a black toddler and a white toddler in the same playpen, they play together, right? They have no prejudice. They don't even know what prejudice is. So this is what I'm saying. The biggest education comes at home. We can't put that reliance on schools, solely on schools. Schools have their part to play, yes. But I think you as a parent, if you're asking me to use you as an example, Dave, I would say, well, the simple fact is you tell your children that, you know what, a black man, an Asian man is there to be respected just like anybody else, you know? And yeah, you can do your part by learning a bit more about, or if you're not sure, ask. You know, you know enough black guys to ask. Yeah, Carby, I'm not sure. You know, how, you know, tell me a part of your culture. I've done it. I've sat with people with many walks. I wouldn't be as successful as I was in my career if I wasn't worldly. I grew up in South London where there is a lot of black people, but I also knew that playing in a predominantly white sport, you have to learn to be worldly. You have to learn to understand Asian people. You have to learn to understand people from white backgrounds, from Irish backgrounds, from Australian backgrounds. It's all different. So it's that and I've always been intrigued by that stuff. It's, as I say, it comes back to what I said before. It's that wanting to educate yourself and wanting to educate your family and the next generation. That's what I'd like to see.
Incredibly powerful words and well said. Butch, the next step for cricket, or are we on the right lines?
The game has an enormous amount to offer. I mean, the thing is, it is a sport. Football is a game for the masses. Cricket's a game for the masses. I mean, crikey, there are more people that play cricket than perhaps any other sport in the world. So it's not exactly as though the game itself struggles to attract people from all backgrounds and all hues, because it has something for everybody, the sport.
Okay, Worth and Dean, and I want to finish with Isha just on women's cricket and the next steps for more inclusivity there. Dino, where you go?
Dave, I mean, what I see from young, talented players, whether they're black, white, Asian, or whatever, is it costs a lot of money. So if you play under 13s and you're in a talent pathway, you are basically paying for your coaching. I don't think all counties do that. I think some counties run it free, but generally, cricket across this country is a paid-for thing. And I think when you're looking at talent, I don't see kids going to football clubs and having to pay for their coaching each week, £10, £15, whatever. But a kid in a county setup, if you look at his kit and everything, it's going to cost, and the travel of the parents getting him to games and everything like that, it's going to cost at least £1,000 a year. And so that's one barrier that needs to be taken away. Not just for black kids, whatever, for all talented kids. They should. There's enough money that comes into our game that at least the talented kids should be given free passage to see if they can make it.
100%.
You know, it happens in rugby, in football, it doesn't happen in cricket.
100%.
From women's perspective?
Yeah, again, I mean, both myself and Ebbs will say we just want to be seen as doing or being good at our jobs. But then there is that, you know, I think we do also feel proud if, there's a young girl or boy out there who sees us on screen and thinks, that they can relate to us by the colour of our skin and wants to go on and do something similar and feels there is an opportunity to do something similar. So, I again, just really thankful for the opportunity.
Okay, Cubs, I'm just aware, just to try and get as much cricket chat as we can into this last few minutes. Jofra Archer and his role as a role model and someone, you mentioned talisman early on, not enough black talisman in our sport. He's one in the England team that so many people look up to because he's burst onto the scene and pulled up trees. Is there going to be an awful lot of pressure on him, and what role should he play, or should he just do what he does and play cricket as well as he can?
Well, I think that's got to be the first thing on his agenda. Really, he's just got to try and perform, keep his name in and around the team as long as physically possible to be able to encourage another young boy to be able to come through the system and try and emulate that. I mean, that's always been the problem, is that there's no one of colour that's been around the England setup long enough to inspire. So, I think, without Jofra having to put added pressure on himself to do anything different, but yeah, he's got an important role in terms of trying to encourage, because let's be honest, there's no one else. So he's one of one, and the numbers are decreasing, sadly. So I suppose, it's an obvious question. It's an obvious answer, really.
This is gonna upset you a little bit, but during the course of the last year or so, maybe not as long as that. Actually, no, it can't be as long as that. I suppose. Where are we? We're June already. Bloody hell! It's almost a year. On one of my gigs, working for one of the websites and stuff, I made a comment along the lines of some of the abuse that Jofra Archer had been getting around about him being lazy, him feigning injury, etc., was exactly the sort of stuff that black players have always faced when playing for England, always. And that Jofra, in this day and age, it shocked me that it was happening again, and that there would be.
But it's not a shock. To me, it's not a shock.
No. What shocked me was the fact that people drew their breath when I mentioned it. Not the fact that it was happening, but the fact that it escaped people's notice for so long that the very things that they were saying were all the old tropes around Caribbean cricketers. I mean, listen, Dino and I, the first time we toured the West Indies, do you remember? We had that guy from the British High Commission came in telling us that black people would sleep under trees all day drinking rum. And Mike Atherton, as captain of the team, got up and left. That was back in 97 or something. So, Jofra has had, I think, considering what has happened to him in an incredibly short space of time. I mean, it took a long time to be able to convince. A lot of people just thought it was a load of nonsense until they saw him bowl for the first time. Then it was like, wow. And then he goes from bowling a super over in the World Cup final to people questioning whether or not he wanted to play for England again within the space of 2.5 months. And you tell me that that's happened to anybody, it would have happened to any other player, given the impact that he's had. And there's only, there can only be one explanation for it. And it's very, very sad. So even though he is a guy that is a shining light, has a huge role to play in kind of like being a role model, he also has to, as you said, he has to kind of keep his head down and perform, because otherwise people get on his case. And that, ladies and gentlemen, kind of encapsulates where we are with the whole thing. Things have moved on, but they haven't moved on that much.
Yeah, and I guess the last thing we should say is that we're indebted to the men from the Caribbean, to the West Indies for coming over in a couple of weeks, because without them making that gesture in these very tough times, we wouldn't have any cricket at all on our screens. So a big thanks to the West Indies. And a big thanks to all of you for being part of this as well, to Dean Headley, to Mark Butcher, to Isha Guha, and to Michael Carberry. Thank you very much for your time and your contributions. It's been great.
Thanks, sir.
Cheers, Dave.
Cheers.